6 ancient structures that should not exist. Have you ever stood in front of something so perfectly made that your brain simply refused to accept it was built by human hands thousands of years ago? History textbooks tell us that ancient people had copper chisels, hemp ropes, and nothing else. No machines, no electricity, no precision tools. But what do you do when you find drill marks in granite that modern diamond-tipped drills cannot replicate? What do you do when blocks weighing hundreds of tons are fitted together so tightly that not even a razor blade can slide between them? What do you do when the exact same impossible construction techniques appear in Peru, Egypt, India, and Japan, civilizations separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years? Today we travel to 6 locations that archaeologists have been arguing about for decades. 6 places that do not fit our understanding of what ancient humans were capable of. And by the end of this video, everything you thought you knew about the past will look very different. Location 1. Gunung Padang, Indonesia. Our first stop is the island of Java, Indonesia. For centuries, local villagers climbed a hill called Gunung Padang, meaning Mountain of Light, to pray to their ancestors. They believed it was simply a sacred hill covered in old stones, a holy place, nothing more. That changed completely in 2010, when a team of geologists arrived, not to pray, but to work. They weren't even looking for ruins. They were mapping seismic activity in the region, dragging ground-penetrating radar equipment across the hillside. But the readings they got made no sense. The instruments were detecting something massive beneath the surface, something with a regular geometric structure. When they began excavating and sent organic material found between stones at 30 meters deep for radiocarbon dating, the results forced them to check their equipment twice. The date came back as approximately 20,000 years old. To understand what that means, 20,000 years ago was the peak of the last ice age. Woolly mammoths were still roaming the earth. The Egyptian pyramids wouldn't be built for another 15,000 years. Agriculture hadn't even been invented yet. The internet exploded. Alternative history enthusiasts immediately declared Gunung Padang to be proof of Atlantis, a lost, advanced civilization destroyed in a global flood. Who else could have organized a construction project of this scale before the invention of farming or government? But the real answer turned out to be less supernatural, and somehow even more impressive. Geologists identified the stones as columnar basalt, a natural phenomenon where cooling lava cracks into perfect 6-sided columns. Nature itself cast the building blocks. What ancient people actually did was find this natural formation and, without any modern equipment, drag thousands of these massive columns into position to reinforce the slopes and create terraces over multiple generations. The true mystery of Gunung Padang isn't lasers or lost technology. It's sociology. How did hunter-gatherer tribes, without kings or armies or written language, organize themselves to work on a single project for hundreds of years? We don't have an answer, and that silence is louder than any conspiracy theory. In Indonesia, people worked with what nature gave them. But what we're about to see in India required something else entirely. Not moving rocks, but destroying a mountain. Deliberately, precisely, at a scale that makes modern engineers nervous. Location 2. Kailasanatha Temple, India. Welcome to the state of Maharashtra, India, to a temple called Kailasa. And I need you to stop and really look at it before I say another word. This structure is as tall as a 9-story building. It has intricate columns, sculpted elephants, detailed wall carvings, multiple connected chambers, and a central tower that rises 30 meters into the air. Every single part of it, every column, every elephant, every doorway, is part of one continuous piece of rock. Kailasanatha Temple was not built. It was carved, downward, from the top of a solid volcanic cliff. Think about what that means for a moment. Normal construction goes from the ground up. You lay a foundation, raise walls, add a roof. Here, workers started at the top of a mountain and cut downward, removing everything that was not the temple. To create Kailasa, they had to excavate and carry away 200,000 tons of volcanic rock. Load that onto freight train cars, and the train would stretch for 40 kilometers. The official inscriptions say this was accomplished in just 18 years, during the 8th century AD. Let's do the math that keeps researchers awake at night. 200,000 tons divided by 18 years equals roughly 30 tons of rock that had to be carved and removed every single day. 7 days a week, no holidays, no breaks, in rain and heat. Before any of the fine decorative carving even began. And here's what makes it truly impossible to dismiss. The builders had zero margin for error. If a craftsman accidentally chipped off the trunk of one of the stone elephants, it could not be reattached. There was no replacement block. The entire monument would be ruined forever. Online, the theories range from ancient machines visible in the wall markings, to sound-based technology that could soften stone, to extraterrestrial assistance. Because how do you explain that level of precision with hammers and chisels? But engineering historians point to something called the vertical extraction method. Unlike pyramid construction, where workers had to lift heavy stones upward, gravity was working for the Kailasa builders. Waste rock simply fell down as they carved, no lifting required. And the stone-splitting technique: drill a row of holes along the cut line, insert dry wooden wedges, pour water. The wood expands with enormous force, splitting the rock cleanly along exactly the right line every time. Kailasa is not a monument to lost technology. It is a monument to what humans achieve when thousands of skilled people commit to a single vision for generations. And that, in its own way, is more astonishing than any alien theory. Kailasa stood in plain sight for centuries, astonishing everyone who saw it. Our next location was hidden from the entire world, beneath the surface of the Pacific Ocean, until a single scuba diver went looking for sharks and found something that rewrote history. Location 3. Yonaguni Monument, Japan, 1986. The westernmost point of Japan, a remote island called Yonaguni. Diving instructor Kihachiro Aratake descends into the water to scout a new location for watching hammerhead sharks. Instead, he comes face to face with something that stops him cold. On the ocean floor, rising out of the darkness, is a massive stone structure. Flat terraces, right angles, what appear to be perfectly cut steps, a pathway that curves around the entire perimeter of the monument. It stretches 150 meters long and 40 meters wide. When news reached the mainland, the world started talking about the Japanese Atlantis. And the timing made it even more extraordinary. The ocean in that region was last at a low enough level to expose this structure approximately 10,000 years ago, during the last ice age. If this is man-made, it predates the Egyptian pyramids by 5,000 years and the Sumerian cities by the same margin. Believers in ancient advanced civilizations pointed to specific details that seemed impossible to explain as natural. 2 perfectly circular holes drilled into the edge of one flat slab, positioned exactly where columns would be mounted. A rock formation that unmistakably resembles a giant carved head, a face looking southward with defined features. Could this be the remnant of the legendary continent of Mu, the Pacific equivalent of Atlantis, swallowed by the ocean after a catastrophe? Geologists who have studied the site are divided. which almost never happens in science. Some argue that every feature can be explained by the natural fracturing of sandstone, which tends to split along straight lines and right angles due to its layered structure. The steps are just natural erosion. The face is pareidolia, the human tendency to see faces in random shapes. Others point out that the concentration of geometric features in one location is statistically improbable for a purely natural formation, and that circular drill holes don't form naturally in sandstone, ever. The debate is still officially unresolved. Yonaguni remains one of the few places on Earth where mainstream science genuinely does not have a consensus, and that uncertainty is perhaps the most honest answer any ancient mystery has ever given us. Japan gave us a mystery that science hasn't solved. Our next stop takes us to an island in the middle of the Pacific, where a medieval emperor built a city that served a purpose so dark, so calculated, that when archaeologists finally understood it, they called it the world's first luxury prison. Location 4. Nan Madol, Micronesia. Pohnpei Island, Micronesia. In the middle of the Pacific Ocean, far from any ancient trade route or major civilization, sits a city built entirely on artificial islands. 92 man-made platforms, each constructed from basalt columns, some weighing up to 50 tons, connected by canals, rising 8 meters above sea level. Nan Madol is often called the Venice of the Pacific, but Venice was built on wooden stakes in a shallow lagoon. Nan Madol was built in open ocean, by people with no metal tools, no wheels, and no draft animals. The construction mystery is extraordinary. The basalt columns used here come from a quarry on the opposite side of the island. Moving them overland across dense jungle was not feasible. So how did ancient Micronesians transport 50-ton stone columns across open ocean? Online theories went to the expected places: levitation, sonic technology, giants. One researcher named Victor Berg reportedly died under suspicious circumstances while investigating the site, which immediately spawned theories about residual radiation and extraterrestrial energy fields. But archaeology provided a genuinely elegant answer. The builders didn't move the stones through the jungle. They used the ocean. The basalt columns were lashed horizontally beneath large bamboo and timber rafts. In water, the stone becomes slightly buoyant, and the raft's lift kept it from sinking. Ocean currents did much of the work. For the vertical lifting, raising 50-ton stones 8 meters without cranes, they used a cribbing method. Stack logs crosswise, like a log cabin but made of stone. Use palm trunks as levers, raise the structure one layer at a time. Slow, methodical, requiring hundreds of workers over decades. But here is where the story gets genuinely sinister. Why build a city here at all? Why spend decades and enormous resources on an isolated island with no fresh water and no farmland? The answer? Nan Madol was a golden cage. The ruling dynasty, the Sodalers, ordered every tribal chief on the island and all of their families to come and live in this stone city. It sounded like an honor. It was absolute control. There was no fresh water on the artificial islands, no way to grow food. Everything, every coconut, every drop of drinking water had to be delivered by boat from the mainland. Any chief who thought about rebellion simply had his supply lines cut. No food arrives, revolt ends. Nan Madol was the world's first architectural system of political control. A city designed not for people to live in, but to make it impossible for them to resist. The Sodalers used architecture to control people. Our next destination used architecture to challenge everything we know about how stone can be cut, and created artifacts so precisely machined that modern engineers still cannot explain them. Location 5. Serapeum of Saqqara, Egypt. Everyone knows the pyramids of Giza. Everyone has seen the Sphinx. But the true engineering mystery of ancient Egypt is not standing under the open sky. It is buried underground, in a place called the Serapeum of Saqqara. In 1850, French archaeologist Auguste Mariette noticed a sphinx's head protruding from the sand. He began digging and found an avenue of statues leading to a sealed entrance. The stone plug blocking the tunnel was so massive that Mariette had to use explosives to get through. Inside, galleries stretching hundreds of meters cut directly into solid bedrock. And standing in alcoves along the walls, 24 enormous sarcophagi. Black granite, pink granite, gray granite, each one approximately 4 meters long and over 3 meters tall, each weighing between 70 and 100 tons, with lid stones weighing an additional 30 tons each. When Mariette approached one of the sarcophagi, he noticed something that sent a chill through him. The dust on the floor was completely undisturbed. The footprints of the workers who had sealed this place 3,000 years ago were still visible. No one had been here since. The sarcophagi were still sealed. Archaeologists were certain they were about to find sacred Apis bull mummies, decorated with gold and jewels. When they finally managed to slide the 30-ton lid aside, inside was nothing. Absolute vacuum. No bones, no gold, no dust. Only a perfectly polished black stone surface. This emptiness is what launched 1,000 theories. Why build a 100-ton container and put nothing inside? The alternative history community points to the granite composition. Granite contains significant amounts of quartz, which generates electricity when compressed. The piezoelectric effect. Were these boxes parts of a giant battery? An energy system? Chambers for preserving something beyond our understanding. But the manufacturing quality is what truly defies explanation. Engineer Christopher Dunn brought a precision machinist square to the Serapeum and held it against the interior wall of one sarcophagus. The gap between the square and the surface was smaller than a human hair. The interior corners were perfect 90-degree angles. Think about what achieving that requires. A craftsman must climb inside a granite box in tight quarters by lamplight and polish the hardest stone in Egypt to optical precision. One wrong stroke and the surface is permanently damaged. There is no fixing it. Egyptologists point to inscriptions found scratched on some sarcophagi, crude hieroglyphs that contrast sharply with the flawless polish of the stone itself. Their theory? The sarcophagi were created during an earlier, more advanced period of Egyptian history. Later, less sophisticated generations found them and repurposed them for Apis bull worship, scrawling their labels on surfaces they could never have produced themselves. As for the manufacturing method, experiments have shown that copper saws loaded with quartz sand can cut granite at a rate of a few millimeters per hour. To hollow out one of these sarcophagi by hand would require decades of continuous work by an entire team. And the logistics remain completely unsolved. The tunnels of the Serapeum are narrow. 2 people can barely pass each other. How did 100-ton stone boxes get in there? How were they turned at right angles in tight corridors? How were they lowered into alcoves below floor level and sealed with 30-ton lids when there is only 40 centimeters of clearance on each side? Not enough space for levers. Not enough space for people. The Serapeum is perhaps the single most uncomfortable archaeological site for mainstream historians. Because here, we are not debating interpretations of symbols or the meaning of paintings. We are looking at a physical, measurable engineering result that we genuinely do not know how to replicate today. Egypt hides its deepest secrets underground. Our final destination takes us back to the surface, to a city in Turkey, carved not into a cliff or a hillside, but straight down into the earth. 18 floors, deep enough that it could hide an entire civilization from the outside world. Location 6. Derinkuyu, Turkey, 1963. A man in the Cappadocia region of central Turkey is renovating his home. He knocks down a wall and finds a room he didn't know was there. He explores it and finds another room, and another, and a corridor, and a staircase going down. He has accidentally rediscovered Derinkuyu, an underground city that had been sealed and forgotten for centuries. What archaeologists mapped over the following years is staggering. Derinkuyu descends 18 stories, approximately 85 meters beneath the surface. It contains living quarters, kitchens, wine cellars, oil presses, stables, schools, churches, and freshwater wells. It could shelter an estimated 20,000 people, along with their livestock and food supplies, for months at a time. And it was completely invisible from above. The 600-plus ventilation shafts that supplied air to all 18 levels were so cleverly designed that they look, from the surface, like ordinary wells or rocky outcroppings. The main entrance, when sealed from the inside using a massive circular stone door weighing hundreds of kilograms, was indistinguishable from the surrounding rock. Alternative theorists propose the obvious. An underground city this sophisticated could only have been built by a pre-flood civilization. The layout, they argue, mirrors aerial photographs of ancient surface cities, too organized to be improvised, suggesting it was planned by someone with access to aerial perspective. Others point to ancient texts describing beings who lived underground, hiding from something terrible that ruled the surface world. Conventional archaeology points to the Phrygians, who occupied this region around 800 BC, as the likely original builders, though the city was expanded and used heavily by early Christians fleeing Roman persecution in the 1st centuries AD. The volcanic tough rock of Cappadocia is uniquely easy to carve, soft enough to cut with basic tools, but hardens when exposed to air. You could hollow it with a pickaxe. The ventilation engineering, however, continues to impress modern architects. The shaft system maintains breathable air throughout all 18 levels using passive airflow, no mechanical assistance required. The thermal mass of the rock keeps temperatures stable year-round. Whoever designed this understood fluid dynamics and thermodynamics in ways that most ancient civilizations are not supposed to have. But the deepest question Derinkuyu raises is not how it was built, it's why. Building an 18-story underground city capable of hiding 20,000 people is not a small project. It requires enormous resources, years of labor, and a very powerful motivation. What were they so afraid of that they built an entire civilization underground? History offers several answers. Foreign invasions, religious persecution, perhaps the memory of a catastrophe so devastating that the only rational response was to disappear beneath the earth. We don't know which is true, and the stone walls of Derinkuyu are not talking. Today we walked through 6 places that science cannot fully explain. A pyramid older than civilization itself. A temple carved from a mountain, top to bottom, with zero margin for error. A submerged monument that geologists still argue about. A city designed as a political prison. Stone boxes machined to a precision we struggle to match today. And an underground world built by people who were terrified of something we no longer remember. It is easy and tempting to say aliens, to say lost technology, to say the answers lie outside human capability. But consider the harder truth. Ancient people were not primitive. They didn't have smartphones or laser cutters, but they had something increasingly rare in our world. Time, patience, collective purpose, and the willingness to work toward a goal that would only be completed by their grandchildren's grandchildren. Perhaps we haven't lost the technology of the past. Perhaps we've lost something more fundamental, the belief that some things are worth building, even if you will never live to see them finished. Which of these 6 structures surprised you the most? Tell me in the comments. And if you want more stories that history forgot to tell you, subscribe to Atlas of Secrets. There is so much more to uncover.